Welcome to Married to History, where he loves history and I love learning and aggravating him.
That is so true.
Do you like the new intro?
It's aggravating. Aloha, I'm Christopher. I have a fancy piece of paper on my wall that says that I know more about history than most people do. Oh, so no fancy rewrite for me. I just do my
If
narcissistic, arrogant pitch.
you are more than welcome to rewrite that anytime you want.
I can make it more narcissistic.
I know you could.
All right.
I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and Crash Course on YouTube to teach our kids history. Hey, honey, I have a history
Not a
question
fan of
for
that
you.
guy.
Which guy?
Yeah, the Crash Course guy.
You don't even know who it is.
I'm familiar with Crash Course, or at least I'm familiar with something that I think is the Crash Course history.
Did you know there's two guys?
There are multiple guys that are doing their crash bit history lessons on YouTube and whatnot. I don't recall being a fan of any of the ones that I'm aware of. But then that's me being picky because I'm sure I'm not much better than they are. Well, I know I take it back. I know I'm smarter than them, but I don't know if I'm
sure.
deliberate better than them.
Yes. Okay. Well, honey, I have a history question for you today.
I love history questions.
So, if you had to guess, what would you think my favorite musical was? Wild guess. Just.
Are we talking ones that our kids have been in, or just any musical anywhere through any generation of time?
I was having this conversation with Primus earlier today. She does not like Seussical, or that's not her favorite one that she's ever performed in. She's still cringes about her hairdo that I had her wear. But that is my favorite musical that our kids ever performed in. Seussical is freaking amazing. But no, it's not my favorite, overall stage musical.
Okay.
It's great for kids theater, though.
Well, I'm going to get my second guess would be then 6.
That is probably my current favorite. Indeed, it is. I did want to talk about a historical musical, but not 6.
All right.
It was a good guess, though.
Since you're giving me the clue of historical
Yes.
in there, and actually more musicals are historical than I think people want to give them credit for, but I'm going to go with Les Mis.
Hey, you're right. I want to talk about Les Mis. So I had a question. So it takes place during the French Revolution, right? Right?
Kinda.
Why are you just staring at me? What do you mean, kinda? It's in France.
Because it's in the aftermath of the revolution. Some historians might say it's part of the revolution, but really it's more the aftermath of the revolution.
I don't even. But if it's it's
So
part
the
of
revolution, the revolution starts in. Oh, I was about to say 97. That's not right. The revolution starts in the mid to late 90s. I don't remember the year off the top of my head. Maybe it was 97.
1990? It definitely wasn't going on when I was alive. Okay.
The revolution starts in the 1790s.
Okay.
Gets to I don't remember exactly when he came to power. I want to say around about 1803 or so. Early
Okay.
1800s, revolution gone, and Napoleon is taken over. French Republic is now French Empire. Napoleon exists
Okay.
until about, what is it, 1812, 13,
I have no
sometime
idea.
around there. Napoleon is forced out. They put the king back into power in France. When I say they, I mean the other European powers. Put the king back into power.
So the revolution completely bombed. That's what I'm learning.
Yes.
Got
And then in 1815, Napoleon gets out of Elba, comes back. His rule only lasts or the empire is only restored for 100 days. And then Napoleon's out again, and they bring the monarchy back in again. And so the French the revolution, in my opinion, the revolution is dead when Napoleon takes over. Because they went from, we had one guy telling us what to do, to, now we have a republic where we're voting, we're contributing, we're all telling each other what to do. Right back to, we got one guy telling us what to do. But there are some people I know who have included the Napoleonic era and probably even the years after that when they talk about the French Revolution. Kind of like you've asked me in the past about the 100 Years' War. Why'd they call it that? Why'd they call it the 30 Years' War? Well, arguably, you can break these things up into multiple different things, but there are some people that call for just lumping them all together in the same pie.
It seems lazy.
But in either case, Les Mis is at the end of all this.
Dang. So, no French
And
Revolution.
I must admit, I did not always know that. I remember the first time that I watched Les Mis. I didn't watch the musical. I was watching the movie version with Liam Neeson and I was about to say Gregory Peck, but no, it's not.
I don't know.
Jeffrey
I didn't watch
Rush.
it.
Loved those two. That was a very good show. And I got the impression that this was all happening like throughout the course of the revolution.
Now, confession, because sometimes I don't want our listeners to actually believe that I'm actually a complete idiot. I mean, sometimes I am a complete idiot, but sometimes I do know stuff. So I did know that it was not part of the French Revolution. I mean, if you watch the movie musical version, it says right at the beginning, like the year, and it calls it like the June Rebellion or something. I don't remember what it was. And I remember looking it up and being like, oh, it's not part of the revolution. But I still don't understand. It's like, but it's all part of that. If we're going to lump 100 years worth of battles into one thing and call it the 100 Years' War, and if we're going to lump like Napoleon's empire into the French Revolution, why isn't this lumped as well? And was it a big deal?
Well, as I said, some historians probably do, others not. Like to the best of my knowledge, in any field of expertise out there, you're going to have players or experts in the field that are going to say, "Oh, this should be included in this shouldn't be included in that." It's kind of off topic, but I remember when I was in college, I learned about a court case that I was not familiar with. And I'm probably forgetting the name now. I want to say it was the Ocean Suites trial. And it was a case where this was either during the Civil Rights Movement or it was in the decades before the Civil Rights Movement. I don't remember the year now. But it was a case where a black man had bought a house in a white neighborhood and unhappy about it. A white mob showed up trying to threaten, intimidate him to leave. Somebody in the house, if I'm remembering the details correctly, somebody in his house fired a shot into the crowd outside the house. And he and a couple of the other people in the house were put on trial for murder. I don't remember the outcome. I think he was found innocent, but I don't remember for sure what the outcome was. But the reason why my professor put that case before us wasn't for us to see that, oh, hey, this is another horrible example of how racist the United States has been in its past. It was put in there because she wanted us to talk about and discuss with ourselves. This is obviously something that none of us had ever heard before, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of our listeners hadn't heard about it either. And her point was for us to decide, why haven't you heard this before? Is this a case that should be included when we learn about the Civil Rights Movement, or is it right that it is not included with that? And so we talked about for a while, and if I remember correctly, all of us came to the consensus that, oh, yeah, this should be. And I know for certain that the reason why I said at the time, yes, this should be, was because I'm in a liberal college. I'm trying to get a degree.
I know
I need to say that, of course, this should be involved in the civil rights movement. I mean, and it wasn't a stretch either. It was clearly a case of, all right, racism led to the events that caused this thing to happen. But in the back of my mind, and I felt so embarrassed because after we all said that, oh yeah, this should be included, the professor told us the very thing that I was thinking, but I didn't have the guts to say at the time, that actually there's a good argument for why this isn't included, because this wasn't a segregation case. There was nobody being tried because he was not being. The crime wasn't that he wasn't being allowed to buy this house. The crime wasn't that a mob showed up and tried to lynch him. The crime wasn't that he was being forced out of his property or anything to that nature. This was a murder trial.
But that was the background that led to the murder.
All that was the background. But because this was a murder trial, that's why one could argue that, okay, this does not go along with what we learn about in the civil rights movement, because this was not him fighting for his civil rights. This was a murder/self-defense story, which, again, there's room for the argument in there. But at the time, I thought of it, and our professor later told us that this was that at least this was what she was hoping that some of us would realize. Not necessarily that was the right thing. But yeah, the argument also existed for, okay, well, this is a good reason why it's not included when we typically learn about the civil rights movement. I mean, when we learn about the civil rights movement, we learn about the brave men and women who sat still at the counter, who sat on the bus, who were willing to make peaceful, nonviolent protests in the face of violence and adversity and everything else that goes on in there. But in this case, this was a case of, all right, a mob gathered around a guy's house, or somebody. I don't think the shooter was ever identified, but then it's been many years. So
I feel like you're missing details.
I think I looked up the case one more time just because I couldn't remember what his name was.
Yeah,
I can see why this would be separated from that. But so I bring this up as the case of, well, this is an arguable thing. There's plenty of good arguments for why this should be included. There's good arguments for why this should not be included.
Well, and what I'm gathering too is there's just too many stories. In the case of the civil rights movement, like there's just too many good examples. So
those are just the ones we know about.
Exactly. So is that example that your teacher had you discuss better than one of the other stories of civil rights events happening? Probably not. So then it would be not included.
That is a fair argument.
So is it that's what you're saying about this setting for Les Mis, is that it was just isn't important enough to go along with the French Revolution?
Not so much that I'm not saying that so much. I'm just saying that there's room for the argument. And honestly, I do not care if we consider it part of the revolution or not, as long as we recognize what it is that we are talking about. Okay. I mean, if we're talking about the events of Les Mis and the events that occur in Les Mis, the real world historical events, having that discussion is important and good and could be fun. But deciding whether or not, this should be included in the revolution, this shouldn't be included in the revolution is kind of a secondary matter. It's kind of like think about it like and I'm probably going to beat up for this. Think about it like a party. If you're going to have a party, all right. The purpose of the party is you want friends, you want family, whoever you're inviting to come and to have a good time. Does it really matter what color the chairs were at this party?
Sometimes
I'm sure some people are going to say, yeah, it matters. But in my mind, like, no, the important thing is that we had fun at this party.
Sure. I'm not sure that's the best example, but yeah.
It's not the greatest example, but in my mind, that's the thing. We can get together and talk about the events that happened from the 1790s up to the 1820s, and we don't have to agree on whether or not we call that period the revolution, as long as we can agree or discuss the events that did take place in there.
All right, well then can you discuss?
That which we call a rose would by any other name would smell just as sweet.
Yes, but war doesn't smell so good,
That which we call gunpowder would smell just as sweet, no matter what we called it.
Okay, so all that said, can you tell me about the setting of Les Mis?
Why don't they make gunpowder-scented candles? More men would buy candles if they could make gunpowder-scented.
I don't know.
Or bacon-scented. Do they make bacon-scented candles?
I'm sure they do. So are you
avoiding my question? I really want a
gunpowder-scented
candle. Sorry, what was the question?
Can you tell me about the setting of Les Mis, because I never quite understood?
I am not overly familiar with the details of the revolution after the Battle of Waterloo, after Napoleon is removed from power.
But I mean, it seems like a big deal. I'm always surprised at things that feel like a big deal to me that you don't know.
I'm sorry. So
this was made into a 3-hour-long musical, honey.
So
this is important.
So in my limited studies, as they've been, when I look at the aftermath of the French Revolution, we talked about this before. I'm more the macro historian. Yeah. I look at the effects that it had all over Europe. Particularly, I like to focus, and I focus my attention on the spreading of nationalism throughout Europe. As far as the more specific details of what occurred in France afterwards, I'm not overly familiar with those. From a handful of things that I remember seeing from the movie, and I'm talking about the movie, I lost track of the timing and whatnot of the events in the musical versions. I seem to recall that at least one scene is it LeMay's funeral?
Lamarck's
funeral?
General Lamarck.
Okay, so I was getting his name. If I remember correctly, he was one of Napoleon's better generals, a cavalry general, if I remember correctly, who sided with the revolutionaries after Napoleon was out.
So wait, so he was a real person?
I don't remember. Like I want to say that his name was LeMay, but now that I say that, I might be getting him confused with Curtis LeMay.
I'm pretty sure it's Lamarck.
So
Lamarck is dead.
I believe that he was a real person, or at least the person I'm thinking of was obviously real, and I believe he was a senior commander in Napoleon's army, one of Napoleon's favorites. And if I remember correctly, there's some unhappiness in the story because the king is trying to say that, Lamarck is a hero of mine. He served the crown well and whatnot. And the people were upset. It was like, no, he supported the revolution. He was a revolutionary hero. He was not a monarchist. He was a revolutionary. He was a Republican. So there was the anger about symbols being used, and we have arguments like that today, where symbols from the past that meant something at one time are being appropriated or destroyed by another group today. So I know that was one of the reasons for people being unhappy, at least in the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not overly familiar with the details. after Napoleon is defeated at Waterloo, and then after the Council of Vienna, where the surviving European powers basically decide to try to put Europe back together exactly as it was before the Revolution, there's really a jump in my understanding of what happens in France between that point all the way up to when Napoleon III, having not become emperor, but he liked to call himself emperor, is basically the emperor of the Republic of France, tries to take on more powers than he's supposed to. It effectively
just like his daddy.
Effectively becomes kind of like an emperor again. His uncle, if I remember correctly. Napoleon III was, I believe, his nephew.
Weird.
And I never did. I know I tried to look it up once, but I never found out who Napoleon II was.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was Napoleon. He was obviously Napoleon I, and then his nephew, or if it wasn't his nephew, I'm mistaking it, was called Napoleon III. Never found out who the second was.
Huh.
I'm sure it's out there somewhere, and I'll bet I've read it once, but I have no memory.
Well, do you mind looking up more? Because I really I want to understand why the guys were fighting and what that had to do with, like, Lamarck's funeral.
Okay, well, I can't be for certain, but I'm gonna guess some ones that I think are pretty.
No, I don't want you to guess. I want you to look it up.
Oh, all right, fine. I'll look it up.
I love you.
Do you?
I do. I want you to do the homework so I don't have to.
That's what a teacher always wants to hear.
Because I love this story, but I know it's historical fiction, so I know that all the main characters are fictional, and I love their stories, and it's just so beautifully written, but, like, I don't understand the context. Like, I don't understand why these guys are fighting and what it has to do with the revolution. Apparently nothing, because it's after the revolution. I don't know. I want to understand, but I don't want to look it up.
Okay. That's what I'm here for, is to make up for your shortcomings.
Yep, that's marriage.
What more could a husband hope for?
That's how it works. Thank you. So this is going to be two-part episode.
Oh, goody. I love those.
Say bye.
Bye.
And we're back. Did you do your homework?
I don't do homework. I assign homework.
You did homework. You had homework. So tell me all about Les Mis and the French Revolution.
It's a terrible book. Nobody should ever read it. It's a worse musical. Nobody should ever listen to it.
Mouth.
If people want a good, compelling story about love during a revolution, then what they need to do is watch episode 4 through 6 of Star Wars.
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful, beautiful love story
between two twin siblings.
They're not in love.
They had a thing.
She falls in love with a brigand who is older than her.
Yeah, that's a little messy.
And they have a talking pet. It's a classic for any princess story.
That's great.
Lots of talking pets in episode 6.
That's true.
All right, so learning about the French Revolution. All right, so I'm going to open up with this little thing, and that because this came up almost at the beginning of my research, and I loved it, hated it. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
This name came up in my research. Talleyrand, my old buddy Talleyrand.
I've no
Why
idea
do I call him my old buddy, do you say? Well, this is why.
Sure.
So, Talleyrand is the basically the chief diplomat of Napoleon during Napoleon's empire. Yeah, he had somewhat of a political career during the Revolution. He was a clergyman before the Revolution.
Yeah,
but he's arguably Napoleon's favorite diplomat, and he's very skilled at diplomacy. He's able to negotiate quite a few things that work out for the best of Napoleon's empire, and after the empire is over, that work out, or at least are adopted for France, not necessarily work out the best for France.
Okay.
But anyway, the reason why I call him my old friend and why I loathe his existence is because he is the guy responsible for the XYZ affair and arguably thus the Quasi-War.
What is happening? You're making stuff up because you can't think of real names for things. That is not real. The XYZ affair, the Quasi-War. What is this?
Give me strength.
These are placeholder names in somebody's fiction. What is happening right now?
All right, well, since both the XYZ affair and the Quasi-War on their own could be whole episodes of this,
my gosh. I'm writing it down.
I will say this. Talleyrand is the unscrupulous, corrupt politician who hoses the United States in both of these occasions.
Wait, what? Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So
sorry for half a second. I was like, the United States didn't exist then.
Really?
I didn't say it.
I love you.
I know. Okay, go on. I'm listening.
All right. So I wasn't aware of this before I was doing the research, or before you mentioned it the last time that we were talking about this. So Les Mis takes place after the Revolution, during what we call, or rather what historians call, the Bourbon Restoration. It's called that because the Bourbon was the name of the royal family. They were being restored to the throne.
Did they drink a lot of bourbon?
No. It's not even spelled the same. So, so Talleyrand is actually responsible for this. When Napoleon is defeated and the Allies are trying to decide, all right, what are we going to do? Who we're going to put back in charge of France? Talleyrand makes the argument and sells the majority of the Allies on the idea of, well, put the Bourbons, the royal family, back in charge, with making who will eventually be Louis XVIII, which is Louis XVI, the executed king. This is his younger brother, his next oldest brother.
Wait, they were both called Louis, or did I not listen?
I don't remember if his name was Louis in the beginning, but because when he became king, he picked a royal name. Yeah.
Got it. I'm following.
And he picked Louis XVIII, with the argument being that no, Louis XVII was his nephew, was Louis XVI's son, who wasn't going to be taking over.
What? Well, I know if I get caught up on all this stuff, we're going to be here forever. But
all right, so we're going to skip over that. The important thing is that the Bourbon. It is agreed by the Allies that the Bourbon family will be restored to the throne, and that Louis XVI, the former king's younger brother, is going to become king as Louis XVIII. That's the important thing. And Talleyrand had a hand in that. He's the one that convinced the Allies to do this. There were a couple of other names that they were shooting around, but this is what they end up choosing. All right.
Okay.
Now, this sort of thing has happened before, where there's been a revolution, the revolutionary government fails, the kings are brought back, and as has been happened before, the new king, he is slow to undo all the things of the revolution, doesn't want to aggravate people. I mean, it's understandable.
Right.
People are still kind of sore on a lot of these things. So he's fairly moderate in his policies. So I'm going to have to actually read off my list here because, I don't remember all of these things. All right, so with his restoration, these are the agreements that are made. First off, France will now be a constitutional monarchy, not an absolute monarchy, which it's been in the past.
That's progress.
So the king does not have all power. But according to the new French Constitution, which is called the Charter of 1814, and all this is done before Napoleon makes his comeback for the 100 days.
Wait, sorry, you have to slow down for me.
I apologize. All right, so
Revolution.
Napoleon is forced into exile after his in 1814, after his debacle with Russia and loss of faith with a couple of other things, not to mention the Allies overpowering him.
Sorry, so this is like he set himself up as emperor, and then they're like, "No, you're out of here. Go away."
He's forced into exile.
Okay,
they bring the Bourbons back.
Okay,
that lasts for a very short time before Napoleon finds out that things aren't really getting better and decides to escape and return back. But Napoleon is only back in charge for about 100 days before he's defeated at Waterloo. After that, he's exiled for good, never to come back, and he dies in exile. And there's a second Bourbon restoration. All right, so all of this...
so King, Revolution, Napoleon, Emperor, King, Napoleon, King.
Yes.
Got it.
And so I'm not sure if Les Miserables starts off with the first Bourbon restoration or the second one after the 100 days. I didn't put that much energy into looking up that particular part. But okay, under the Charter of 1814, the king has retained almost all of his power, really. I mean, he still is the one that gets to make the laws. He's still the one that executes the laws as well. So he's basically Congress and the president together.
I thought it was supposed to be a constitutional monarchy.
It is a constitutional monarchy, so there are some powers that he doesn't get. He does not have the power to tax. That he needs permission from the legislature, which I believe is referred to as the Chamber of Deputies, and this point in history, France's history.
Okay.
So yes, he does need their permission to tax, and he doesn't really need it. I'm using air quotes here, but he kind of I'm going to use air quote, needs it.
Yeah.
He needs their approval to do some of the things, but he doesn't really need the approval to do some of these things.
Okay.
It was something that wasn't really quite resolved in my mind. It might have been just as simple as, well, if he could convince enough people in the legislature to, do what I want you to do, then, he could get away with whatever he wanted.
Right.
So, the Chamber of Deputies is a little bit more like advisors at this point than the legislative body that controls the legal system in France.
Got it.
All right, so a couple of things that he did that made people like him a little bit more. So first off, he did not undo a lot of the things that the revolution set up. So for one thing, he kept a uniform legal code for everybody. He kept the national police force in power instead of a royal police force or private security from the nobles. He maintained that the clergy, even though he restored a lot of the power and influence of the Catholic Church, he kept the clergy as paid as state workers or as laborers of the state. So they received they received a stipend from the government. They were paid by the government rather than them tithing the people and getting rich off of that.
Oh, that's interesting.
He also kept centralized education. There was a lot of efforts to limit education in France at the time.
Okay.
He kept the ideas of meritocracy around. The press maintained most of its freedom, not all freedom, but most of its freedom. Another thing that he did was he allowed the people to still vote, so they would vote for the seats in the Chamber of Deputies.
Right.
But, of course, that didn't mean that they didn't vote for the king or anything like that.
Right.
But voting is kept very limited. So it is not universal suffrage like what the revolution wanted, or like some people in the revolution wanted. The voting is limited to a very small amount of the population. It's based on your taxes. If you pay enough money in taxes, you're allowed to vote. If you don't pay a certain amount in taxes, then no, you don't get to vote.
Instead of being tied to landowners.
Instead of being tied specifically to landowners. So this meant that landowners probably be able to vote. It also meant that some members of the bourgeoisie and the upper middle class probably also could vote.
Oh, okay.
So a couple of other things he did was, he put France back on good relations with Spain and the Ottoman Empire. Napoleon had trashed both of those. Ironically, he trashed the Ottoman one before he even became emperor.
Dang.
So you've heard about Napoleon's expedition into Egypt?
Yes.
So that was done before he became emperor, and that ticked off the Ottomans something fierce because Egypt belonged to them at the time. And the Ottomans and France had a good, or at least good-ish, relationship at the time.
Yeah.
So they were very ticked off when they found out that Napoleon was doing this thing.
And they probably really didn't appreciate him shooting the nose off the Sphinx either. It's at least
you didn't mention shooting the pyramids with cannonballs, so we're not going to touch that. I saw that. I saw a clip of that in the Napoleon trailer. Like that. Okay, you've prompted me into a segue here. There was a battle outside of Cairo, but the pyramids were barely in sight. They were a good 8 to 10 miles to the south of the battlefield.
And potato. Close enough.
That's my line. Get your own. So, like I said, eventually Napoleon does return from exile, but it only lasts 100 days. He loses at Waterloo. He's kicked out again. Second Bourbon Restoration comes in. There's a lot of civil unrest at this time, basically because, despite the fact that the revolution is over, the political ideologies, the groups, so I'm hesitant to call them political parties, so I'm going to call them political sympathies, are still active, and they don't like each other. You've got your royalists versus your liberals versus your peasantry versus I wrote down some of these other ones versus the ones that actually want a republic, so your Republicans, and also versus the Bonapartists, the one who want the empire back. So lots and lots and lots of mixed political ideology going on.
Also, everyone is poor and miserable.
Not everyone is poor and miserable, but yes, there is a lot of poverty and there is a lot of misery. So during the time of the Bourbon Restoration, and so this is about a 15-year period between 1815 all the way up until about 1830. And you can even extend it on to 32. 32 is where Les Miserables stops, and that's where I'm going to stop this.
Okay.
So this is about a 17-year period. And during that 17-year period, it's going to be bad economic times for a lot of people. To go off on a couple of things, there's going to be bad harvests. That means that food is going to be hard to find, and that also means that food prices are going to be inflated. The economy is also going to be bad because France has been slow to industrialize, at least slower than its biggest neighbor neighboring competitor, Britain. And the revolution is not going to improve that very much. So a lot of the French people that have money, that have means, they're buying British goods. Even British food is cheaper than buying French made. And so to try to curb that, Louis is going to do, rather, I should say the French government, Louis and the Chamber of Deputies, is going to make the most ridiculous mistake that I think almost every politician makes when in regards to economics. He's going to put high tariffs on all imported goods to force people to buy domestic instead.
French,
and that doesn't help the problem because, like I said, there were bad harvests. There is not that much food anyway,
to buy?
And so the prices are still going to skyrocket. And all these goods that the people do want, now you're just forcing it under the table, so they're going to go black market instead. So all of this stalls the French economy.
You could understand why someone might break a window to steal a loaf of bread for his sister and her dying son.
Yes, especially when, again, there are several years of bad harvests.
Totally get it.
Let's see.
I think it was a son. Did she have a daughter? She had a child.
All right, so some of the shenanigans that are going to go on in the conflict between all these different parties. One of the more grotesque things that's going to happen is an event known as the White Terror. This is going to happen in the south of France, so not near Paris, but where the royalists, having been restored to power, at least that guy's because, our guy is in charge now, so we can do whatever we want, that kind of mentality.
We're back.
So they're going to go on a revenge spree and literally the White Terror, white because that was the color of the royal family, and they're going to kill and they're not going to be nice, shall we say, to the people who aren't royalists.
Is it more guillotine stuff?
I don't know about guillotines. There's lots of different persecution, and there's all kinds of persecution going on, and again across the board, not just in the White Terror. So you've got your political manipulations going on. You've got people arguing about who can vote. You got people fraudulently voting, stacking the ballot boxes. You got people competing with corruption for appointing their friends, their buddies to public offices. Also, to try to manipulate and control how many seats there are in the Chamber of Deputies so that your party has more influence, or rather your sympathies, your ideological sympathies have more influence. Some other things that are going to come about that are not going to be terribly popular that are going to affect the French economy, is reparations to the Allies. After before Napoleon returns, France gets off pretty leniently for its indemnities, what it owes to the Allies for having defeated France, for France losing the war, basically.
Pause. You keep saying Allies, and I keep thinking World War II.
So would it help you if I said the coalition instead?
Sure.
Okay, fine. The coalition.
Got it.
This being Prussia, Russia, Austria, Britain. Spain might have been part of it too, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Perfect.
So about after the 100 days, when Napoleon is defeated again, well, France has lost again. France has surrendered again, and this time the Allies are going to come back. Sorry, the coalition is going to come back with even harsher penalties, including the indemnity, how much money France owes to them for having to do this again.
Right.
So yeah, that's not going to help out the economy. Let's see. None of these other things are too important to. I've been the vague information that I've given you about, like the voter fraud and the competition for public offices. That's all standard stuff that tends to happen.
Yeah, no surprise.
When you have new governments that are in turmoil like this.
Yeah, or political upheaval.
So this is going to go on for about 9 years until Louis's death. Louis XVIII is going to die in September of 1824. And when he dies, his younger brother, so 3 brothers have been king of France at this point. His younger brother is going to become the new king.
Louis the 19th?
No, he's going to take on the name Charles X.
Good.
And Charles X, not good.
No good.
So I mentioned that Louis tried to kind of play it as a moderate. He kept a lot of the things of the revolution around. I don't know if it was because he was smart enough or he just wasn't a competitive, wasn't a confrontational kind of guy. That ain't Charles. So again, this repeats a pattern. The first king after a revolution is like kind of slow, doesn't want to do anything, doesn't want to make any waves or whatnot.
Too much.
But the second guy right after him, he wants absolute monarchy back. No. And he's going to do an awful lot of things to try to get his absolute monarchy back.
Right.
So yeah, Charles X is not going to be popular amongst anybody outside of the royal class, basically.
Naturally.
And of course, because he's a royalist and he wants to see absolute monarchy restored, the royalists are going to get this idea that, oh, hey, our guy's in charge. We can go around and do whatever the heck we want again.
More White Terror
so
stuff?
Again, not quite as bad. Like, it doesn't get named the White Terror or the Second White Terror or anything to that nature. But yeah, they're going to try. They're going to keep on with the nefarious stuff that we talked about. Political corruption, economic corruption. So among the things that Charles is going to do, which is going to not earn him the love of the majority of the people, he is going to restore the Catholic Church to even more power than it had under his brother Louis.
Right.
Among the things that he's going to do, and this one was kind of funny, he's going to enact an anti-sacrilege law.
How do you enforce that?
That's why it's actually kind of laughable. So according to the anti-sacrilege law, that yes, if you take the name of the Lord in vain, or you desecrate a church building or a statue or a painting or something of that nature, then you're guilty of sacrilege, and it comes with the death penalty.
What?
Yes.
Wait, what? So, like, you could be put to death for graffiti?
Yes. Oh, but if you graffitied a statue building. Or a church building or something like that, yes.
Dude.
But none of the records, or rather all the records that I found, were agreed that this was never enforced.
Oh,
Probably because it was impossible to enforce.
Okay.
He also began a campaign of financial contribution to compensation, I should say, to all the royalists who lost land and property and whatnot during the revolution. So France, already struggling economically, now taxpayers are going to be footing the bill to pay all the royal families, the upper class families who lost their land and their holdings during the revolution.
That's so stupid. It's like he wanted to make the people mad.
Mm-hmm. So he's also going to restore press censorship. This is what's gonna lead to something that happens a lot I think that we see in Les Miserables. So, all right, fine, the press is censored, but that doesn't stop with all the many printing presses that there are, especially in Paris. People are just gonna start printing pamphlets in secret and passing them out to the crowds. So this is gonna force like the opposition to the royalists into underground and specifically into small sects. In Les Miserables, we see that Marius and his buddies, they are one of these many sects.
Yes.
He's also going to disband the National Guard, leaving only the Royal Guard. So in other words, soldiers are loyal to him now instead of being loyal to the people or to France.
Right. All just sounds like such bad news.
Okay, I mentioned the bad harvests already. I mentioned that, industrialism isn't doing too well. All right, so the biggie here, and this is where we're going to get into some details that you might start to recognize from Les Miserables.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
So March 1830, Charles is going to appear before the legislature, the Chamber of Deputies, and he's going to make the most unveiled threat that he ever has, as far as making it absolutely clear to them, I want to be an absolute monarch again.
Okay.
I don't like you guys. And remember, there's lots of different political factions in the Chamber of Deputies at this point. And because they're not really united, this is one of the reasons for why Charles is able to do a lot more things to kind of restore himself to power.
Can you play them against each other?
You can play them against each other, but also because they're not agreeing, they're busy bickering with each other.
Okay.
They don't have the unity they need to get together and say, hey, we should stop arguing with ourselves and stop the king from doing something that he shouldn't be doing.
Right.
So his speech backfires, though. Because of the blatantness of his, I shouldn't say the blatantness of it. Some of the sources I said it was veiled, but everybody understood what he was saying. This ended up galvanizing his opposition, and there were enough not royalists. In fact, I think it was over about 3/4 of the Chamber of Deputies was not royalist at this point in time. And they got together and they managed to actually do something. They condemned Charles and his government.
What?
Yep. Now, really, what
does that mean?
That doesn't really mean anything. It means that it's like Congress telling the president, "You're mean.
We don't like you."
So that's not quite accurate because Congress actually has power to stop the president if he's doing bad things. But the Chamber of Deputies really don't have power to do anything. So they can call him names, sure, but that's about it. So Charles, being the top dog that he is, the alpha male that he is, decides that, all right, you condemn me? Well, this is what we're going to do. So he passes these 4 specific ordinances. 1, no more freedom of the press. Press is absolutely under my control 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, not very bad. Thing 2, he disbands the Chamber of Deputies. He dismisses the whole group, citing the emergency powers that he has. So he's interpreting the Constitution on a very broad scale to suit his own needs. So he cites his emergency powers to say that this is for the national good of France. I am disbanding the Chamber of Deputies. He reduced the number of voters, so he took to the rosters that they have of eligible voters, and he thrashed that, cut that down a lot, specifically to make sure that more of his supporters were in than anything else. And then he called for new elections for a new Chamber of Deputies to be elected.
Oh, he still wanted a chamber. He just wanted to fill it
by the Constitution. He has to have the Chamber of Deputies.
Got it.
So where he's playing the Constitution very loosely, but he's still trying to appear as though he's playing it.
Got it. But is the average person going to understand that he's technically following the rules?
Do you want me to try to help you understand how a politician's brain works? I mean, we're going to sit here forever, and we're probably only going to confuse ourselves.
No, that's fine.
All right. So this also actually ends up backfiring, despite the fact that he has limited the number of voters and limited the press and is trying to stack the voting block with people that are going to support him. The elections happen, and the chamber actually gets more anti-royalists than it had before he disbanded it in the first place.
How?
So yeah. I don't know.
That's impressive.
The underground, the best explanation that I can give you is that the underground press was able to spread the message enough that, hey, look at what he's doing. He's evil. He's trying to become an absolute monarch again. We don't want this. And there's nothing quite as good as the press, or at least word of mouth, especially in like secret combinations and whatnot, to galvanize the people, to rally the people.
Right.
So this is going to all culminate in the July Revolution of 1830. Basically, it's going to be royals, clergy, and even the peasantry. So the peasantry, I want to be clear, all of this, even the revolution from the beginning, has never been about the peasantry. It's always been about the middle class versus the upper class.
Wait, really?
Even now, with everything that Charles is doing, the peasantry, the lowest class, they still love the king. They are loyal to the king, and they are a support for him. It's the middle class, the bourgeoisie, that are the ones that want these things to change. And this is very often the case.
Confused.
This is very often the case in a lot of revolutions, the American Revolution included. It was the middle class that wanted to create and establish this new nation, that wanted to get away from Britain. The poor man, the peasant farmer, he didn't care. He wasn't buying paper, so he wasn't getting burdened by the Stamp Act. He wasn't buying tea, so he wasn't getting burdened by tea prices.
Is it also a case of like the devil you know versus the devil you don't? Does that come into it as well, or is it mostly
not necessarily? Because in cases like that, well, the devil you know is the government. So I get what you're saying.
King versus.
So yes, that actually is probably also a very accurate thing. It's a common thing whenever there have been revolutions or whatnot, or if ever we're just changing who the king was. The idea of, okay, well, what are we really getting? We're just trading one boss for another. Are we really getting a good deal out of this?
Right.
Do we like the one boss better than the other? So yeah, I'd imagine that the devil you know argument. Not to mention the fact that France is still largely Catholic. The Catholic Church has been gaining much of its power. The church is on the king's side, and a lot of the French peasantry are probably still in the old mindset, even despite the revolution of, king was appointed by God, put there by God, so I need to support him.
Right, I didn't think of that.
So yeah, like I said, it's the peasantry, the clergy, and the nobility, the royals, versus the middle class and also the urban workers. So I want to be clear. When we're talking the peasantry, we're not talking the peasantry as exclusively the third class. There are some third class or lower class, poor class people that are not in the peasantry. They are not out in the farms, out in the hinterlands. They are the urban workers who also are poor and desperate because, again, we talked about France not being quite industrial. This means that France is not bringing in the raw goods necessary for the factories to work and produce stuff. So a lot of the factory workers are also out of work, are suffering hard times. They are miserable.
Gee.
All right, so let's see. All right, so the July Revolution of 1830 is a success for the middle class and the urban workers.
Yay.
Charles abdicates, leaving the throne to his son, who also abdicates. Like 20 minutes later, he abdicates.
Oh, okay.
And so then the throne goes to not Charles's. Goes to Charles's grandson, not the son of the son who just abdicated the throne, but the son from one of his daughters. So the throne goes to him. But the Chamber of Deputies disavows and says, nope, he's not the king. And the fact the Chamber of Deputies declares the throne vacant. France has no king.
Whoa.
This only goes on for a short spit of time. Eventually,
Power vacuum. Someone's going to step up.
Well, no, it wasn't set up. The Chamber of Deputies handles this matter themselves. Eventually, they do pick one of the king's cousins, Louis Philippe, to be the new king of France. He's going to be king for quite a while, actually. But he was popular among the people. He was one of the people that the coalition was considering to become king in the first place before Talleyrand convinced them all to go with the Bourbon Restoration instead. So yes, Louis Philippe becomes king, and things aren't going to really improve that much. Louis Philippe doesn't make many attempts to become an absolute monarch, but because of bad economy, things are still awful and miserable in France, and he's really not able to recover that much of it.
Right. It's going to be hard to turn the whole country around.
Yeah. Oh, I thought I had something more before we got into this. Let me double check. That's right. Louis Philippe was popular because he was liberal-minded, so that's one of the reasons why they liked him more than they liked some of the other candidates. All right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so despite the fact that Louis Philippe is more liberal-minded, this still does not satisfy one of the political groups. So we talked about there were the royalists, there were the liberals, but there were also the Republicans, the ones who wanted a republic. They are not happy. I mean, when the chamber evacuates the throne or declares the throne vacant, well, that means that the Chamber of Deputies are now in charge, and the Chamber of Deputies are essentially a republic. When the Chamber of Deputies decides to put a new king on the throne, the Republicans are still unhappy. And you've still got all these underground sects out there that are passing around pamphlets all over the place. So these ideas are very popular. And I want to be clear, all of these ideas, most of the things that are happening, these things are happening in Paris. They are not happening to quite the same degree outside of Paris. There are things happening outside of Paris. There is a rebellion here or there, a revolution here or there. There are things like the White Terror, which happened in the South.
Right.
So there are things going on outside of Paris, but for the most part, all of the intrigue, all of the juicy, the nitty-gritty stuff, all this is happening in Paris. So we've made this joke before that like California, its fate is decided by San Francisco and only San Francisco because that's where the majority of the people are. Or LA. And that's basically what's happening in France right now. Even though a good deal of the people live outside of Paris, Paris is controlling the country.
Right.
Or at least influence in Paris is what's controlling the country. Wanting to make some grand display, believing themselves to be more powerful and more influential than perhaps they probably are, the Republicans settle upon a strategy for how, they know what they can do to galvanize the people, to show the people, hey, we are stronger than they are telling us we are, and we can do this thing.
Okay.
I got ahead of myself. Sorry. All right, so among the things that are creating misery at this time, in addition to the poor food supplies and the bad economy, there's an outbreak of cholera that hits France pretty hard, particularly the city of Paris. And among the people that are going to die in this plague...
Fontaine.
What?
Fontaine.
No.
I don't know if she dies of cholera. I don't remember.
No.
Go on.
I don't know. Fontaine probably wasn't based on a real person.
You disappoint me.
Her story, I'm sure, was based on real people, but I don't think she herself was based on a real person. Because there were plenty of women who was forced into those kind of conditions.
Yes. Who dies?
But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so two of the more prominent people that die, I'm probably going to butcher his name, are the Prime Minister, Pierre. I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Pierre? It's not Pierre. That when I asked somebody I know who's fluent with French to say it for me, it sounded like it was Pierre. So it ends with an R, but I guess that last R is silent. So
French, they don't pronounce half the last letters.
Yeah, I might be butchering it wrong. But anyway, so his death is significant because he's part of the chamber, or not part of the chamber of ministers, sorry. He's the prime minister of France, so he's effectively running the government for the king.
Right.
And he is one of the king's strongest loyalists, or Louis Philippe's strongest supporters. So with him gone, that means that Louis Philippe has lost a significant voice in politics in the city. And then also somebody that you may or may not have heard of before, popular hero of the revolution, a man by the name of, now I might be butchering this correctly, Le Marquis. Do you know who I'm referring to there?
How dare you? Lamarck.
Oh, Lamarck. I knew I heard that name somewhere.
Lamarck, his death is the hour Lamarck of fate, the people's man. His death is the sign we await. Go on.
You backed off a lot from the microphone right there.
I'm watching the sound spike.
Oh, okay. So yes, Lamarck is among the people that died because of this cholera epidemic. So as you know, and anybody who's read the book knows, there's a funeral. And this is the event that the Republicans decide to seize upon. They are going to storm the funeral. They're going to seize his body, or they're going to seize the funeral procession. There's a fancy word for the coach that the coffin rides around on. I don't know what it is. But they're going to steal that. They're going to drag it to the Bastille, the birthplace of the revolution, and they're going to rally the people around a new revolt, a new revolution to actually establish finally a republic, or rather bring back a republic to France.
Cool.
All right.
And they succeeded.
You've read the book, you haven't read the book, but you've seen the musicals.
I have started reading the book twice, and I love it so much, but it's a lot.
A warning to anybody out there who might be considering reading the book.
Read the abridged version.
It is a good book, but French literature of the time tends to be very, very breathy and broad in all things that it reads. Like you won't be able to get to the end of the book without having read at least 10 to 15 pages on the biology of every single character, even the ones that only showed up in one scene to say hi to somebody.
I swear, like literally, I tried reading the non-abridged version. I didn't know there was an abridged version. This was years ago. And there are tangents on tangents on tangents. There is literally chapter after chapter all about Waterloo. I didn't come here to learn about Waterloo. I came here to read about Jean Valjean. It was very upsetting. And then I gave up. And then I started reading an abridged version, and I was loving it. But then, I don't know, I'm not a good reader, and I didn't finish it. But I loved it so much. It's such a good story. It is such a good story. Sorry, continue. You were talking about something.
All right. So, yes, this revolution, this is known as the July Revolution.
June.
No, this is the July Revolution of 1832.
What? Lamarck's funeral and all that?
Yep.
That was June.
Nope.
You are wrong,
sorry, my bad,
sir.
my bad. You were right. Yes, the June Revolution. Sorry, I was getting the July Revolution of 1830 and the June Revolution of 32 mixed up. I apologize.
I know what I'm talking about.
Do you, though?
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right.
Lamarck is dead.
So, as you know, the rebellion is going to fail, and this is pretty much why. They grossly overestimated their power and influence. There were only about 3,000 revolutionaries, 3,000 rebels that participate in this thing. A lot of those 3,000 are not even Frenchmen. They are refugees from Italy and Prussia and Austria who got a taste for nationalism and were kicked out of their countries. But France welcomed them in the nationality spirit. So these are nationalist-minded exiles.
But Paris is a terrible place to live at the moment.
But it's also one of the only places that would accept nationalists.
But there's no food.
But it's also one of the only places that would accept nationalists.
But there's no food.
Yeah, it's not an ideal condition, but it beats going there and trying to scrape out a living beats staying in their native lands and being political prisoners, or if not political, are executed for political means.
Okay, I believe you.
So yeah, like I said, there's only about 3,000 to 5,000 rebels, but the army that shows up, which is made up of National Guardsmen and regular army soldiers, is about 60,000 strong.
Whoa!
So yeah, the revolution gets off to a good start. I mean, it only lasts about a day and a half. That's how long it lasts. During the first day, they actually make a lot of progress. They secure a good chunk of the city. I think almost about half of the city.
Wait, for real? Paris is big.
Yeah, like I said, they secure so much of the city.
Quotes.
They set up barricades and whatnot. But yeah, the soldiers come in and just it's very short work. The rebels don't really have that realistic of a chance because they're grossly outnumbered. And Louis Philippe, unlike other kings who have like run and hid whenever there's been trouble, he actually sticks around, and he on his horse himself goes around throughout the city, even within gunshot of all the barricades and whatnot, and encouraging his soldiers and giving the orders to fire on them.
Whoa.
So this is galvanizing. So he is getting more popularity out of this than the revolutionaries are, because most of the people are seeing him. Hey, look at him. He's standing here. He's not abandoning. He's not running.
Wow.
He's taking charge of the situation. So yeah, it works out very well for him in popularity-wise. So yes, as you know, the rebellion will eventually fail. Not all of the rebels are going to be killed or executed. I think about 100 of them are going to be arrested and put on trial. all of them are going to be found guilty. All of them are going to be sentenced to death.
Yeah.
But all of them are also going to have their sentences commuted to life in prison, and most of them won't even serve that long.
Really?
Yes, I found one account which was hilarious. I think one guy served about a month in prison before eventually being released on, I kid you not, an insanity appeal.
What?
You know why they believed his appeal?
Why?
He was able to convince them that I supported the revolution. Obviously, I'm not right in the head.
What? That's kind of genius. I can't believe they fell for that.
Need I remind you that in our modern times, people fell for the Twinkie defense?
Is that considered history? Can we do an episode on the Twinkie defense?
We could do an episode on the Twinkie defense. I would encourage anybody listening to say it's easy enough to look up. Just type in Twinkie defense in a Google search, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the story.
Yeah.
Well, you will enjoy the ridiculous stuff of the story, not enjoy the whole story because it does involve somebody getting killed.
Well, and it's kind of aggravating.
Yes. So another reason why this revolution isn't going to be terribly successful is because the government is going to be able to successfully get the press, the legal press, to rally around the idea that, no, this was just an extreme minority among the people. This was not this was not something for the whole of the people, to speak to the whole of the people.
They didn't have the support of the people.
I would say you can argue that it was similar to the January 6th rioters to a degree. My understanding is that there were many thousands, if not tens, or maybe even hundreds of thousands of people protesting at the Capitol that day. But if I remember correctly, only about 1,000 are among the ones that actually stormed the Capitol building and went inside. My numbers might be wrong.
I don't know the
point is, it was a very small minority that actually went into the Capitol and did this bad thing that I think most of us, at least I hope, can all agree was not a cool thing to do. But where the press today, I think, would have most people convinced that, oh, no, everybody that supports Donald Trump was just as guilty as those guys. In this case of the French Revolution, or rather the June Revolution, it's the opposite way around. The press work hard to make sure that everybody thinks that, oh, no, this was just a small group of the people. This wasn't a big thing, no big deal.
Oh.
So it kind of dies away. And Louis is going to be king, Louis Philippe is going to be king of France for the next 18 years. There's not going to be another revolution until 1848, in which Louis will eventually be overthrown. So
again? Oh my gosh, there's so much.
So this is all after Les Miserables, though. Les Miserables ends with that night in Paris.
It does, yeah.
So, but to kind of finish out the story, Louis is going to be overthrown in another revolution in 1848. Louis Philippe is going to be overthrown,
Yeah.
And then, tell me if this sounds familiar.
Okay.
After he's overthrown, a republic is going to be created. They're going to call themselves the Second French Republic, and they are going to run like a republic. But France is still going to have a lot of problems. The republic is going to last about 5 years or so before it is, I kid you not, overthrown in a coup by Napoleon. And the Second French Empire starts.
Which Napoleon?
This would be Napoleon III. This is Napoleon's nephew, the son of his brother.
Gosh.
He is, I kid you not, he is going to stage a coup
like
his uncle did against the original republic, and is going to have a successful coup and is going to create an empire with himself as the emperor, like his uncle did.
France, get it together. Like, come on. It never ends.
It's not so much that it never ends, but that it repeats itself a lot. It's just always a question of how big is the circle going to be.
Let me guess. After that, they put the king back on the throne.
I don't remember. So I know that the French Empire doesn't last forever. Napoleon is eventually... I don't remember exactly what happened. So, but the Second Empire doesn't last. And I know that France has a troubled history after that. Eventually, I do believe that France does get a king again, but I'm going to take that back. I don't know. So I've got a bit of a blank spot in between the ending of the Second French Empire and World War I. But if I remember correctly, come World War I, France is not run by a king anymore. I believe it has a republic, or at least a prime minister or whatnot is the guy running the show. I might be remembering that wrong. And then I know that I've read somewhere, I think there are multiple French republics that are going to be created in between that space of time. So there's the original from the Revolution, then there's the second one that we just talked about after Louis Philippe was overthrown.
Right.
And I want to say there's going to be at least 4 more, before we get to modern-day France, but I might be remembering those numbers wrong.
That's crazy.
So yeah, France is going to have a troubled political history.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly. So when did the French Revolution start? What year?
The French Revolution starts in the early 1790s. I don't remember the year off the top of my head.
1790s.
Yeah, I want to say 1793, but I could be wrong.
And then when?
No, 93. 93 is when they execute. The king. So the revolution started before that. I don't remember the early 1790s,
That's
late
fine.
1780s at the earliest.
That's fine. We'll just say 1790. And then Napoleon the Third made himself emperor.
1848.
1848. That's so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that's almost 100 years.
That's inside your father's lifetime.
It's like, what, 60 years or
that
something?
Means that your father could have been born under the reign of Louis XVI and then lived all the way to see France under the Second Empire.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Get yourself together, France. That's nuts.
This is unfortunately what happens in a lot of. This is why I've said it before, and I'm sure I'm going to say it again. This is why I say that when it comes to revolutions, the United States got lucky.
Apparently.
Because we did have a good share of problems, economic problems and political problems, but we were thankfully, and Washington had a good deal of help with this, we were thankfully able to get all those things kind of calmed down and quelled without there being too much violence or destruction. And it probably helped that our population was so spread out over a large area. There wasn't a lot of cramping. There wasn't a lot of urban pressure to make matters worse, and not a lot of people in general, because we had a fairly small population at the time. But you don't have that in France. In France, there's no new land for people that want to expand and do their own thing. And you have a lot more pressure because also France is surrounded by adversaries, whereas the United States didn't really have any adversaries around. So I've said it before. Yeah, the United States got lucky. There have been many other revolutions in history. Most of them end up collapsing in on themselves. I've said this before. In every case in all the major revolutions of history. So when I say this, I talk about, we can count the Roman Civil War as one, we can count the American Revolution, the English Civil War, the French Revolution, the communist revolutions in Russia and in China. In all of these cases, the goal of a better, freer government was that was the goal. But in every single one of them, even if they got a taste of that for a while, they all quickly collapsed, and each one ended up back into the hands of a dictator. In some cases, a worse dictator than what they had before.
So the lesson here is, don't rebel. Just be content with what you have, no matter how terrible it is. Just ride the wave, live your life. You'll die soon anyways.
I wouldn't say that's the lesson.
No, that's definitely what you're telling
something
me.
That is a conclusion that people can walk away from.
No, that's definitely what you're telling me.
The other could also be just like try to be a little, or to recognize how difficult it is, and hopefully plan better and have more. Ultimately, I think the most important thing is going to be the economy and the unity of the people. You need to have a strong economy, because if there's a bad economy, a revolution is going to make that worse, because there's an economy always slumps after a period of conflict, especially if that conflict has destroyed a lot of the industrial base or the ability to make stuff.
That makes sense.
And then also, if you add to that the people aren't unified, the people aren't all on board with what are we going to do after this is over, then that's going to lead to problems. And so we mentioned that there were at least 4 different types of political ideology that were just duking it out with each other, not getting along in the case of France. And those are just the ones that I remember from the research I did. There were probably other factions too that were helping the situation.
Seems likely. Dang.
So yes, that is the story of what was going on in Les Miserables, or rather that is the world that those characters were living in. And in case you were curious about this, I thought you might enjoy this. So when the June Revolution happens, the author of Les Miserables, he was there in Paris.
What's his name?
He was, Hugo something or other, I don't remember. So he was there in Paris that day, and according to his own writings, he was in, I want to say that he was in a park or a courtyard of some kind. He was painting or writing something. I don't remember what he was doing.
Victor Hugo, thank
you. So yeah, he was just in there, but when he started hearing the shots going on, didn't really quite know what was happening. He had to wait for a custodian to unlock the gates to let him out. And then he spent the night hiding in like a small hole in an alley as bullets were flying past him, because all the roads, he tried to get home, but every road he went to, there was a barricade, or he'd run into the soldiers.
Oh my gosh. See, I had heard that, but I had forgotten. He was like there.
Yeah, he was
He
there.
wasn't fighting, but he was like in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. And he wrote an amazing story because of it. That's cool.
So yes, there was your story of Les Miserables. Are you happy?
Thank you. I am. They were miserable, but I am not. I appreciate you, honey. That was awesome.
Thank you.
I mean, it wasn't awesome for them, but
Okay, so, and I want to be clear, of course, there is so much more to this.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I kid you not, there's no way that there have been enough books written to completely convey what has actually happened in the French Revolution. I dare say not even a quarter of the thing, or not even that, I'd say not even a tenth of the things that could be written about what went on during the Revolution have probably been written. So if this is something that you want to do, I highly encourage you to go out and look for it. Just know that it's going to be an awful lot of reading to fully grasp this concept.
Yeah. Read Les Miserables if you're brave enough. I mean, it's very informative. You will learn a lot if you don't fall asleep.
That's a nice little qualifier you put in
There's
there.
even like chapters on Parisian slang from the time. It really is a great historical document because it was written at that time, but Victor, come on.
Oh, what? I'm reminded. So this came up in my research. So I don't know if this is why coffee versus tea, France and Britain, but this is at least an argument for why. So mentioning the hard economic times and how because of they were cheaper, people were buying British goods.
Yeah.
Well, the British are selling tea.
Right.
Lots of tea. But the the local French, or the nationalist French, the sovereign French, the people that are saying, no, we're proud of France. We don't want this British stuff.
Right.
So there's an anti-tea thing going on in France. There might have been already, but this is going to like aggravate that situation. So there's going to be a lot of people campaigning saying, no, French don't want to drink tea. And they're going to use it to support, I kid you not, the wine industry. So the French are going to take their wine, and they were already taking their wine pretty seriously, but the French are going to take their wine even more seriously now because we don't drink puny tea. We're going to drink wine. And because not everybody can, because wine doesn't give you quite the same thing that tea does, the French are going to go with coffee. So still not go with tea.
No tea.
So there was a quote.
Oh, that's interesting.
I hope I remember to write this quote down because I thought it was funny. Nope, I didn't write down the quote. There. So I apologize. I thought it was funny. He said something about we don't need stinking tea. Our wine is better or something. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't as funny as I'm remembering, Russ. I think I would have written it down.
I'm sure it was hilarious. Wow. Well, awesome. That was a lot.
Was it?
That was almost an hour long.
We did better with Athens.
Better?
We did longer with Athens. So are we done? Am I free to go? Yeah. Are we going to do our closing? Oh, that's right. You have to look at your script to know what to say.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to hear a future episode with more information about today's topic, contact us on Gmail, Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok at Married to History Pod.
Also, please contact us if you have a silly question idea or if there's something from history that you would love to learn about.
Just be sure to specify in your message if it is silly or if it is serious, because we don't want to treat your genuine quest for knowledge like a joke.
Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Intro.
Do. Oh, I thought you were asking me to make the intro sounds. Yeah. I like the intro music. I'm going to miss it if we ever change it to something else.